Hi, I'm Geher. I'm professor of psychology here at the State University of New York at New Paltz. I am also founding director of our interdisciplinary program in evolutionary studies, and I've been asked to speak about the truth in psychology. And from my perspective, the answer to that is one word, which is evolution. I conduct work in the field of what's called evolutionary psychology, and ever since I've been bitten by the evolutionary psychology bug, I have seen everything about human behavior from this perspective. And to my mind, understanding and incorporating evolutionary principles into our thinking about human behavior is absolutely essential. In a nutshell, evolutionary psychology is essentially taking Darwin's ideas about evolution, natural selection, sexual selection, multi-level selection, and applying the ideas of evolution, or what we call evolutionary principles, to understanding of behavior. The reason that we think this is a reasonable approach is because behavior is necessarily a product of the nervous system. The nervous system is essentially your brain and all the nerve cells that are spread throughout your body. The most complex organ in your body, the most complex system in your body. Nervous system is an extraordinary evolutionary adaptation. It goes back millions and millions of generations across thousands of species, and it allows animals and organisms that have a nervous system to interact directly with their environment in real time. And so that's really what behavior is. So when we think about what behavior is a result of the nervous system in an immediate sense, and the nervous system is the result of evolution. So without question, human psychology and human behavior is importantly the result of evolution. There are many ways that we can use evolutionary principles to help illuminate factors regarding human behavior. One that I want to focus on today pertains to the concept of what we call evolutionary mismatch. Evolutionary mismatch is, to my mind, one of these ideas that when you learn it, it's one of these like aha moments, and you can start seeing applications of evolutionary mismatch in so many issues regarding human behavior and human life today. Evolutionary mismatch is essentially the idea that there are conditions under which sometimes you have a species in one environment where it exists now, but that current environment is mismatched in important ways from the environment in which that species evolved. Classic example you find with monkeys in cages at the zoo. So in 2012, the Bronx Zoo closed down their famous monkey house. And the reason that they did that was because monkeys were not behaving well, they were not getting along well, they were not developing well. Well, we know full well that monkeys are primates too, and that they need much more space and much more ability to interact with other conspecifics or other monkeys. And there was a point at which the zoos in America realized, like, oh my gosh, we are being absolutely cruel by keeping these animals in these cages. The reason that that was a problem was because of evolutionary mismatch. That's because living in those cages is completely mismatched from the kind of environments that monkeys evolved to exist in. You can take that metaphor and look at what it means to be a human in the modern world today. Humans evolved primarily in the African savanna before agriculture. Agriculture came about 10,000 years ago. 10,000 years is a blink of an eye in evolutionary time. Very little real organic evolutionary change will happen in 10,000 years. However, before agriculture, there were lots and lots of constants in the environments of our ancestors during human evolutionary time. They all lived in the African savanna up until about 100,000 years ago. They lived in small clans with a cap of about 150. Remember, they were nomadic groups, so they couldn't have groups of 10, 15,000 because they had to regularly move from one place to another. There was drought and famine regularly happened each year, so they needed to accommodate for that feature of the environment. Take a look now at what our environments are like now, and in fact, our environments are very mismatched in a lot of ways from those environments that surrounded human evolutionary time. One of the main ways that we see mismatch and how we see it can be a big problem has to do with food and nutrition. Before the advent of agriculture, there was not a single human who ever ate any processed food, ever. Compare that with an analysis from about a year ago showing that in the United States, more than 60%, so a big majority of the food that we eat in this country is processed food. stuff that never would have existed under ancestral conditions. What is processed food? What are the nutritional facts about it? It's more likely to be high in sugar, high in fats, high in all kinds of bad fats that we can create chemically. And the result of that is health problems. So when you look at issues in the United States, such as obesity, type 2 diabetes, cardiac problems, things that you don't see in nomadic groups or in pre-Westernized societies, without question, the problem is rooted in evolutionary mismatch. Under ancestral conditions, when our ancestors were regularly dealing with drought and famine, having a preference for food that is high in fat and high in sugar would have been extremely adaptive. And so our ancestors had evolved those adaptations for those kind of food preferences. Fast forward now to modern times, we still have those same food preferences because those things have not had time to evolve out of us, but those food preferences now in the United States are absolutely deleterious. They have absolutely adverse effects in very large ways. When companies make processed foods, such as McDonald's, they are not thinking about the large-scale picture. They're not thinking about the evolutionary origins. They're just thinking about they can make more money because people like these things that they're making, and people like those things, ironically, not because they're adaptive under modern conditions. People like the food that they produce because those foods were adaptive under ancestral conditions. So that is a case of evolutionary mismatch. We can find evolutionary mismatch in many different contexts. Human societies now are totally out of scale with ancestral conditions. Our minds were designed to have us surrounded by about 150 individuals that we saw regularly, that we connected with on a regular basis. We now live in large cities. We now run into strangers all the time. And we have social worlds that are very mismatched from our ancestral conditions. And without question, the truth is there are an awful lot of problems associated with that. So when you want to understand human psychology and you want to understand the truth, the answer to that is evolution. I'm Geher from the State University of New York at New Paltz, and I teach in the Department of Psychology. Thank you.